Hi everyone, welcome back to another webinar with RankSense. I'm Brittany and I'll just be going through the chat and answering some of your questions. Today we're joined by Jessica Peck from CVS and she's going to demonstrate how to use the Google Image Recognition API with Python. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining and thank you Jess for joining us. How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Before we get into the tutorial that you put together, we just want to kind of learn a little bit about you. Where are you from, for starters?
So I have a kind of weird accent. I grew up in the UK and then I moved to California when I was 10. So Americans all say I have a really English accent, and whenever I go back home to the UK, they're all like, "Oh, you sound so American." So
you're just in between.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into SEO?
Yeah. So I spent time doing kind of my undergraduate degree is in international politics, which isn't a typical SEO path, although I know there are others out there. But I spent a lot of my free time messing around with computers just because that was something I enjoyed doing, and it was kind of stress relief for me. And then after I graduated, I ended up as an administrative assistant for a company that didn't have a website. So I kind of was like, "Hey, do you guys want a website? I could do that on top of my usual admin tasks," and kind of convince them to let me build their website. And then I eventually used that to apply for a job with Perficient, which was Stone Temple at the time. And again, kind of weaseled my way into a job with the internal tools team at Perficient. And so that was a lot of both creating and brainstorming with the team to come up with tools, but also kind of technical SEO work. And so that's where the bulk of my experience with SEO is. And then now I work at CVS with analytics and implementation and spend a lot of my day staring at JavaScript rather than Python, which is a little bit more of a headache. So I do a lot of Python in my free time again to kind of decompress.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so when did you get started with Python in particular?
It was a few years ago. I actually got started because I wanted to make games. And this was another thing where I kind of got started because I wanted to build stuff I could play with and that was fun and interesting to me. And then I realized I could use it to automate my job in real time. And that was something that was exciting. And like being able to bring something I'd made that could be useful to other people in my company and my boss and be like, "Hey, why don't we do this? But like, maybe we could get a developer to look at the code and make it good instead of this thing I've slapped together with like 2 months of experience with Python." So yeah, it started with trying to make games and kind of ended up being actually useful.
And what were some of the things that you automated early on when you started using it for work?
So some things were I used to do a kind of news roundup for Perficient, and I ended up making like a RSS feed for myself of all the like main blogs that I used to read, just so I didn't have to visit all the sites all the time. And I know RSS feeds already existed. I don't know why I decided to make one myself, but I was bored over a weekend. And I also like built concept ideas for the image recognition API and the knowledge graph API and things like that, because we were trying to pull more of that kind of information. And then you know, I helped, the guys didn't use Python, they used PHP and SQL and like things like that. So my Python experience really helped me kind of communicate with the devs and also help pull larger reports or help look at bulk reporting and be like, well, maybe we should look at this rather than this. That kind of thing.
And we'll just take a moment to say hello to your kitty who has appeared.
She's an attention hog. She saw I was recording something and she's like, I have to be the star of the show.
Of course. And so when you first started learning Python, were you doing tutorials? Did you take a class? How did you start to learn?
I did a lot of tutorials. I kind of landed myself in the like tutorial stick zone. I did a lot of just running down, I did like Code Academy and Free Code Camp and things like that. But I feel like I didn't really learn until I was like trying to make something myself that I was interested in, and I couldn't just find an easy how-to. Like I could find a how-to of all the different pieces, but I had to think about how to put them together. And so that's my general advice for someone trying to come up with like to learn a programming language is use it to kind of try and make something that you're actually interested in, and you can't easily Google how to just get that exact thing. And also try and get out of like tutorial town as quickly as you can, and then you can go back to tutorials once you've kind of got your head around some of it.
Were there any things that were difficult for you while you were learning? Did you have any obstacles?
Yeah, because I kind of was like, oh, I don't want to do tutorials anymore. I ended up using a lot of stuff that I didn't really understand. I ended up like using a lot of loops and not really knowing what the loop meant or like syntax. I was like, I know what this does, but I don't know why.
Copy paste from Stack Overflow.
Yeah. They did a really great like April Fool's that was like, we have a keyboard that's everything you need to be a successful developer, and it was just the Control-C and Control-V, and I was like, yeah, let's pull out. But you know, I honestly think it's great to start just copy pasting from Stack Overflow because it encourages you to kind of think about how and what you're doing, and also to think about why it's not working when it works for someone else. There's some critical thinking skills you can kind of get, and also the more you use stuff and learn, the more it kind of gets into your head and you kind of figure out the patterns. I don't think there's any shame from spending time copy pasting from Stack Overflow or tutorials or anything like that, because I think that's how you get to a point where you actually understand it. Building stuff is the better starting point than just like not doing anything. And just what I did for a while before I actually started Python was I would just save tutorials into a bookmark bar and then never look at them, and I'd be like, I'm learning. I saw the name of this tutorial. I can remember that. Yeah.
Right. Better to start building things and get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on, there was a study at Perficient that you helped them do at the time. I'm just going to share my screen. And so this ties into what we're talking about today. Can you tell us a bit about this study that Eric published in 2019?
Yeah, so this was the result of, I had spent the weekend. I'm very into Google image search. I think it's really an interesting field. I think image recognition is really cool. And so I spent a weekend with Python scripts trying to get any response at all from the Google API. And on Monday, I kind of came in and showed my supervisor, Mads Tolander. I was like, hey, Mads, look at this cool thing I did over the weekend. And he was like, oh, what we could do a study about that. And we talked to Eric, and Eric was like, we should do a study about that. And we ended up looking at a bunch of different APIs and pulling information in, at first using Python, and then the devs I worked with converted that to some faster, better script, which I'm very grateful to them for, because it helped me learn a lot about optimization, to show a dev my script and have them be like, so why did you do this? I don't know. So we kind of pulled from Amazon, Google, IBM, and Microsoft Azure computer vision, and it was really interesting because we got to see what different APIs were good at and not good at. Like Google tended to be good, like pretty solid across the board, but Watson used words that none of the other APIs used and tended to be more, have more linguistical flourish. And then this is shocking, but Amazon was the best at labeling like e-commerce photos. I know, a huge surprise. But so it was a really interesting study, and it kind of helped us look at what the edges of how machines can look at things are, and how that compares to humans, and how humans look at things differently if they're searching for them rather than just trying to pick out the most important information, and how computers don't really differentiate that very much. So it was a really interesting study.
Yeah, because what you did was compare not just amongst these 4 engines, but also what humans had tagged the images also, so that you could get an idea of how accurate each one was in different categories, different types of images.
Yeah, I was really glad to not be one of the people that we pulled to tag all the images, because we had to get different people for each one, and we wanted to try and get like a wider demographic as well. So we pulled people and they had to sit and like write down labels for every single image for hours, and then we got another group in to like actually judge which ones were better and worse. And it was very tedious, but like that's how machine learning works. It fundamentally, you just have a lot of tedious human stuff so you can actually make the computers do stuff well. And that's why I like using APIs, is because I don't like doing the tedious human stuff. I like having someone else do it for me and then using that for my own devious purposes.
Yeah, well, and it's great that you published all of it so that, you know, everybody can benefit from that. So it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so can you tell us a bit about the Google Vision API that we're going to be looking at today?
Yeah, this is an API that's been trained by Google. It's one of the many APIs that they have that are open to the public to use. And you can use these same techniques to pull from like the entities API for text and that kind of thing. But we're using it for images today because I love images. And it's basically the machine that they use has been trained on just an internet's worth of data to recognize images. And so what we're just going to do here is there's a simple, beautiful soup script to go to a web page, grab the images from the web page, and then another script to send all of those images over to the Google API and get back the machine's best guess of what's in those images, and then the percent of certainty that the machine has that they are right about that.
And can you give an example of how this could be used in, day-to-day SEO life?
I think there are two ways this can be used. I think images are everything in a kind of serious way. Like, visual search has become more and more important, and people don't tend to use alt text. There are some cases where you don't want to use alt text if it's a decorative image and a screen reader user doesn't need like a paragraph of description. You might skip over the alt text for that. And Google may use image recognition for some of the images. Like, there's some evidence, like an article with a car license plate that doesn't describe the license plate on the page had, if you put the license plate number in, showed up in Google image search and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it as an auditing tool for the images on a page, but you can also use it if you don't have alt text to give you at least some information to start building alt text off of. Obviously, this isn't all you want to do, especially if you care about accessibility, which I hope most people do. But you can definitely use it to kind of bulk label and figure out good labels for a large number of images.
Mm-hmm. One situation that has come up with one of our clients that I foresee us using this tool for is that we can categorize images and understand how Google categorizes those images. So, do we have content that Google sees as racy? Because racy is a category in the API separate from adult, right? And so, that's something that we might want to know for our clients. Is safe search going to be activated for us and that kind of thing? So this is really, it was a timely thing for me in particular. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think it's like that fundamental, we're trying to drill down on entities and having your content all align with each other. So you want your images to align with your text and to kind of build a case for Google that overall everything on the page is worth ranking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so do you want to share your screen and walk us through what you have?
Yeah, I'm just going to start off walking everyone through setting up some of the Cloud Vision stuff.
Sure.
So we're going to start off on the Cloud Vision platform.
And you had mentioned that a lot of the tutorials on how to do this are out of date because they've changed a lot of things. So we really appreciate the updated tutorial.
I really appreciate the opportunity to remember how to do this. So the first thing I did was I created a Google Cloud Platform project. You can create and destroy these all the time. I tend to delete them once I'm done. So you can see here, I have my image recognition project. This is one I created earlier. For this, you are going to want to enable billing, but the level of use for the API, unless you're a really heavy user, shouldn't it shouldn't hit you for billing. And if you're watching this and you're planning to use my credentials to run against the API, I am going to delete this project after this, so you have been foiled. Yeah. The first thing you are going to want to do is to enable the Vision API. So go to the marketplace just by searching at the top. I have already enabled it, but if you have not enabled it, it will say enable here. You can also try the API.
In the browser.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The API is enabled here. So we're going to move on to the next step, which is creating credentials. So you want to create a service account. So I'm just gonna create another service account today. And this is just, it basically creates a email that counts as a service account for, so I've created Vision Demo 2021 for tutorial, and you're going to want to, you don't have to include a description, but it's best to include a description because it's very easy to, if you use the APIs a lot, it's very easy to just forget why you set something up. And then you just hit create. And then you're going to want to select a role. And you just, it's easy, just use the quick access to, this is calling the account you've created an owner so it can access the API that you've just enabled in this project. And then you don't have to do this. You can just move on. So now we have Vision Demo 2021. That's this email. And what we're going to do next is we're going to create a service account key. And they usually have things like neon water, or this is like the nickname that Google gives your account. You can also add your own if you don't want to be messy.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a unique ID. You can disable it from here, which again, I will be doing after this demo. But right now we want to go over to keys and hit add key, create new key, and then just use JSON. And this is creating a private key that is for you only. And just download it to your downloads folder. And that should be fine. And now, with all of that preamble done, we can actually get to the coding bit. It's the bit everyone's here for.
Yes.
I'm just gonna reload this so we can start from a fresh slate.
Sure.
Hopefully it won't take a long time to reload. Sometimes it's faster to load it
because it's so friendly for newbies to get started with. You don't have to install a bunch of things, and it's very straightforward.
Yeah, I'm using Collaboratory for those reasons. It also allows you to connect to Google's computers to use their computing power rather than your own, or trying to use a service like AWS, which again can cost you money. And if you're just kind of learning or playing around, this is like a very stress-free environment, and you can just seek out other people's collabs and run the code and take a look at it yourself.
Definitely.
So the things I'm installing here are Google Cloud and the Google authentication. And I'm just doing this first so I can, everything else is just in the right space.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of the way I'm uploading it with upgrades, it is going to just tell me to restart the runtime over and over, and I always just do.
Mm-hmm.
This warning, I think Python's a very friendly language in a lot of ways. I think sometimes you can see things that it looks a little scary. The warnings and that, usually they don't really matter. It's just telling you you have a little issue. I know the first time I got warnings in a console that I was coding on, I had to go again. I had some developer friends, so I like went over to my friend Stan's desk, and I was like, Stan, I've destroyed everything. He was like, no, I did this morning. You just skip it. And I was like, but it says it's a warning. He was like, yeah, it does that sometimes. And so we're importing files from Colab, and
just being prompted to rerun this cell.
Yep. And I might have to go back to non-incognito mode. I think that's what this is. But we're running over here, so I'm just gonna. You don't have to do that. You should probably just not run it in incognito mode for this specific. It's because incognito mode does not allow cookies, which I always forget.
Sure. And it's going to use a cookie to remember this JSON file.
Yep. So I'm uploading my new cookie. It's just in my download folder. You can see over here that it has been uploaded to the files. The way that Colaboratory works is you have your own kind of safe workspace, and you can upload stuff to it, and Google will eventually recycle and clean out the runtime. So if you're just uploading stuff in here, it won't stay there forever a lot of the time. Like, there are ways you can save stuff forever, but if you're just uploading things, it's usually pretty easy to just keep it safe. And now we have something that our image recognition engine can refer to unlock the Google API powers.
Mm-hmm.
So next I'm doing a bunch of imports, and this is all just other people's code that I am going to use because it's easier than writing everything from scratch. And that's the really nice thing about Python. I've also imported some stuff that you don't actually need to import, but I haven't cleaned this up yet. This is, it's like one click, all the stuff is brought in, and I have a lot of stuff that I can refer to. And so the next thing is you're importing this credential file, and we're going to edit this I'm going to add the file I just got from my downloads folder over here. I'm not going to hit Control V properly. And I'm actually just going to refer to the file itself. You don't need to refer to the path.
Okay.
And then if this is done correctly, down here it will say the name of this key.
Okay.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Okay. Perfect.
Yep. And I've already mounted the drive. This is an artifact, but this is just in case you want to download the image recognition stuff or images to your drive. This is just a way to do that.
Okay. And so what you just did was authorize Google to access your account.
Yeah. And I'm authorizing this collab file to get into my drive. So if I was looking for stuff on my drive, I could go find it.
Okay.
But we want to go out into the Great Wide Web. I have this, I'll show you the sample site first. So this is a site I made for some SEO classes I was teaching at Perficient. And it was basically a spot the problems site.
Mm-hmm.
But it does have some great images. I'm just cultivating my reputation as a crazy cat lady.
I like it.
I'm really not. I like dogs too. It's just I don't have access to any right now.
Might as well go with it.
Yeah, exactly. So we're using the requests library to just get the text from the great catyearbooksite.com, and then we're creating some soup from the HTML data here.
And what does that mean if you say create soup?
So this library is called Beautiful Soup. I would highly recommend it if you haven't done Python before. Look up some tutorials, and then like just this script is all you need to get all of the images on a page, but like it's just a very easy library for breaking a web page up into its components and then accessing those components in a code. And there are a lot of really easy beginner tutorials on web scraping, which you should only do ethically and with permission from the site that you are scraping from. It's against Google's terms of service to scrape from Google, for example. But there are a lot of, especially if you have your own site, it's very cool to be able to access parts of that site from this kind of command line Python perspective. And here I'm just doing the homepage, but you can just do it with the beginning of a domain and then just any page. But we're just pulling from this site at the moment. So you can see here, we went to this page, we passed it into soup, and then we've created a list, and that list is from soup, finding all images. And then next we're getting into loop town, and we've just said for every image that's in this image list, print out https greatcatyearbooksite.com and then add the image source. If I got rid of the source here, it would, we can also do something like print just image, and it will print out. It won't print out. Oh, that's me forgetting how to do Python. So we can see for each image in the image list, I've now added the full source of that image. So alt, the source, and anything else in the image. Over here we've got width, and that kind of thing. But we're not doing that.
Very handy.
Yep. Again, it's beautiful soup. Makes you seem very smart in front of other people. So this is where we're actually sending stuff off to Google. I've limited this to 3. You can do it for the whole page, but I like to be conservative. And what we're going to do here is you have to create a client. So we're creating an image annotator client, and that's all kind of stuff on the API end and the Google libraries that we prepared earlier. And then we are creating the names of the files that we want to annotate. So we've got the URL base and then the image location. So that's the /image.jpg or whatever. So we created this image URI with the URL base and location. And then we create the client. I've done that twice. You don't need to do it twice. And then you set up the image using this is from the Vision library, and then take the image source, which is the image URI, and then you can get the and then we're just going to, this is just so I can run through it and make sure everything's a 200 code.
Okay.
Then so this is using this requests library. I'm streaming all of these image URIs, and so down here I refer back to the R, and I say if the image URI's status code is 200, do the next parts.
Okay.
And so I then hit print labels and confidence for, and then the image location, and then I'm multiplying the confidence by 30. Just to ensure, just because that's how the math ends up working out for percentages. And then for the label and labels, we're going to print the label description, and it just very English sounding, right? Because that's how the Python script on Google's end, that's how they've labeled stuff. And then the label score times 100. So let's hit this. So this is the kind of result you'll get. So it just says labels and confidence for this image, which you can just click on to get the image. And then it says it sees nose, cat, felidae, carnivore, small to medium-sized cats, whiskers, comfort, fawn, font, and snout. I think we can see all of that in this image. We've got this one, which is affiliate marketing. It's a word cloud. And we've got building, not quite right, rectangle, font, magenta, art, pattern, urban design, circle, brand, and paper product. But that's the kind of result you'll get when you run the script. Yeah. And then I've started writing other things you can do with this API, but then I didn't finish that sentence yet.
No worries. And so these confidence labels are created by Google, where Google's telling you how confident it is in this label, correct?
Yeah. Which is why, you know, you're going to get, because the way it's working is it has seen a bunch of pictures of cats and a bunch of pictures of other animals. So it's most of the wires that say cat have been kind of flipped on, but also some wires that say fawn have been flipped on. There are probably some similarities there.
Sure.
The nice thing about looking at animal pictures is there are a lot of them on the web, so Google is very confident about animal pictures. But if you're looking at other stuff, you're going to get not the same levels of confidence or understanding of what the image is.
Sure. So what do you consider to be a good confidence level, like accurate most of the time for Google's?
I would say like over 80% is usually pretty accurate. Like that's the problem with using this to fully automate, is you'll get a lot of false positives because there are certain things that machines can't really understand the way humans can understand, like context. So like if you look down here, let's go back to this image. Was seen as a toy by Google because it, you know, it's kind of a toy-like image, but it's a real cat, right? And there isn't really a toy in the image. Another thing, this is, I'm going to shout out Janelle C. Shane, who is a machine learning data scientist who does a lot of really fun experiments. I would definitely recommend following her on Twitter. But one thing she tests for a lot of these APIs is she will set it up to answer her questions about an image and then ask it, is there a giraffe? And so the image recognition bots like that are set up to answer questions know if someone's asking, is there something silly like a giraffe, that there's probably a giraffe in the image.
Okay.
It will say yes, or, you know, and she'll be like, oh, how many giraffes are there? And it'll guess like 3 because it's pretty sure the right answer is there's a giraffe, because people only ask, is there a giraffe, when there is.
Mm-hmm.
And then some machine learning models will just assume that two things that are often seen together are always seen together in an image. They'll just be like, oh yeah, you know, if it's like apples and bananas or something, if it's only seen pictures of apples and bananas together, it might label a picture of just bananas as apples and bananas because it just expects it to always be there.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is interesting, but it can be frustrating if you're trying to automate stuff. And that's one of the problems with automation, is especially if you're doing it for a specialized data set, that if it's a specialized data set, then outliers are going to be mislabeled. But if it's too general, it's going to make mistakes because it's going to see patterns that aren't necessarily there.
Mm-hmm. For sure. We had one question, whether the Google application credentials higher up, if that is the key that you used.
Yes.
Is that the key found within the service account details, or is it the API key?
So this is the key that I downloaded from the credentials manager, which a million. So it's this private key.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've created your service account, we can go to service accounts here. You click on the service account, go to keys, and then hit create new key, add key, create new key, and then JSON, and then it will download to your computer. And then you're going to want to not look at my horrible desktop background, and you upload it, so it ends up here. So that's the one that I downloaded.
That same file.
That same file, and then you're referring to this down here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just so Google knows that the service account that you set up is the one accessing the API here.
Yep.
This is a pretty common way to try and keep like data safe if you're working with data or with different accounts. You'll do a lot of referring to SSH keys if you get really into development, because it's just the best or easiest way to ensure that you're creating a safe tunnel between you and whatever API you're using.
Sure. And it's very straightforward to use, especially within Colab. They make it easy. All right, so I'm going to see if anybody else has any other questions. I had one question that I'm not sure if I understand. How can Google find copy images? I'm not sure how Google can find copy image. Ali, if you want to clarify that question in the chat, then feel free to. But other than that, I'm going to say, I guess we didn't talk much about how the machine learning side of thing is done. And the beautiful thing about using this API is you don't actually need to know that to be able to use it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in learning how to build your own like image recognition machine learning model, Google actually has tutorials and data sets you can use, but usually it involves you have the classic example is handwritten digits and teaching a machine to recognize handwritten digits. And so the first thing you need to do is have a ton of different variants of different handwritten digits and a ton of people who are willing to sit down and label all of those correctly so that the machine can see, oh, this shape is a 4 or this shape is an 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on the model, like neural networks will see this little piece is here and it's here on all of these different handwritten digits, so except for a 1. So I know it's not a 1, and then it'll see a bit more and be like, oh, it's on all these ones except a 7. So I know it's not a 1 or a 7, and kind of build out like that. But it's a lot of work and a lot of computing power to get a machine learning model going. It is a lot easier to just take other people's hard work and then apply it yourself.
Yeah, and this is a great way to get started and, you know, be able to get up and running with it quickly, and then you can take on a bigger project like that later if you need to.
Yeah. Yeah, using other people's APIs definitely lets you hit the ground running with Python. And again, it's really simple to just import a bunch of libraries and use those and refer to those. And Python's a really friendly community as well, so a lot of people will happily share their wisdom with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something that we've seen. People like you joining us on a webinar like this. So we're very appreciative. Okay. So I think that we can wrap up for now, but thank you again, Jess, so much for joining us. Thanks to the audience so much for joining us also. And we will be back next week with another tutorial and another webinar. I'll just momentarily tell you about RankSense. RankSense is an application that can run on your website using Cloudflare. It will alert you about SEO issues that it finds on your pages. It monitors visits from both users and search engine bots, so it works like a log analysis tool. You can use it to implement SEO changes, no developers needed. It's just using spreadsheets. You can import those changes onto the site. And you can also use AI to automatically create meta descriptions. So you can get in touch with us if you're interested in a free trial. And this webinar and all our other ones will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe there. Follow us on Twitter if you don't already. And there's also, we have a GitHub that you can find today's collab on. So thanks everyone for joining, and thanks again, Jess. Have a great day.
You too. Have a great one.
Bye.